Yeah, so here we are. And thank you for taking the time out of your day to allow us the opportunity to just kind of sit face to face and just, chit chat a little bit about, really whatever comes to the plate. I mean, you've seen the other videos and it's like I shared
Hmm.
earlier. Yeah, of course, there's a little agenda here. I can't deny it. But um,
Yeah.
I do sincerely encourage you to try to hold that space that your words are yours and not influenced by this kind of
Hmm.
environmental condition here. So uh, you shared that, we sat down, we first met at a little Mexican restaurant there in Lake County,
Hmm.
next to Clear Lake there. Um, Boy, that was that was about, how long ago was that now for you?
It was over a year and a half. It
Yeah.
was October 2000. I want to say it was October 2019. It was like I was doing my shadow work in Redwood Valley
Yeah.
with Sabrina,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was like it was. I was still so fresh. I had just kind of been working through the RBT stuff, and I was
Yeah.
very new to the company,
Yeah.
and yeah, yeah, and it's kind of it's wild looking back. At the path and having that initial meeting, because yeah, I do feel most of the time like that was last week. Time has been well spent. I don't want
Hmm.
to say it's flown by. It's just been well spent, and I think that's what's making it go so fast. And but yeah, that was, man, that was quick.
How would you feel, John, sharing a little bit about you know, your background and
Hmm.
whatever that means to you as a person that kind of brought us to the point of sitting at that table at that
Yeah.
Mexican restaurant to all the way to, well, I guess maybe just starting there. Like who's John, and how did you find yourself sitting at the table at that Mexican restaurant talking about AAI and
Yeah.
applied behavior analysis and whatnot?
Yeah. I, I think about this almost every day to some degree. I'm reading Great Expectations right now, and there's a
Yeah.
quote in there where he talks about he goes kind of uh, breaks the wall there, and Dickens is saying, just imagine thinking back in your life at the the number of steps and the different he said it so much more eloquently than I'll ever put it, but yeah, the things that led you up to this point in your life and how all these things coincided. And it's kind of fascinating. Like I've always had a love for people, and that's like forefront in everything that I do. I love people, I love to serve, and that's my personality type. And I think when I was kind of on my own in high school. Last couple of years, I was moving
Mhm.
around from house to house,
Mhm.
um, and it was like a bunch of events that happened in my life. There was my dad had left when I was like 16, and then my mom wanted to move, and I didn't want to move and leave everything that I knew, so I stayed. And then I kind of became like a little bit of a nomad, and I was traveling around to different houses. I was finishing school, and then I graduated. Then I started working with my friend whose house I stayed at. They were so kind to let me in and let me stay there for the last year of my high school career. And they were fair vendors. So then I went with them, and I traveled to all these different places working with the fairs. I worked at an oxygen bar, which is
Wow.
like, for all the people that are eventually going to watch us in our company, don't ever go to an oxygen bar. It's a waste of money. I just want to let you know. And I felt terrible having to tell people every day all these benefits, and it doesn't do that. So just, unless it's like actual oxygen. But either way, I did that, and I traveled from, like San Diego up to Washington, and it was such a beautiful experience seeing all these different places. And then after that, I said I need to go to school, and I found a friend back in my hometown that wanted to do the same thing. So we moved to San Luis Obispo. I started school. um, with no direction. And that's been the for me, getting back to the question, it's like I never really had a direction. And that's what's been so interesting and how I ended up at that dinner. There was never any like I knew what I loved, but I never had that direction or that drive or sense of purpose. And I feel like everyone is always trying to find that in life, and it's so difficult. It can be really challenging if you don't have those mentors or those guides, the Sherpa kind of guiding you
Yeah.
along in your journey. Um, so yeah, I spent like 6 7 years going to community college, and I was a cook for pretty much all those years, and I loved it. And it was just another avenue for me to serve people. And there is something so beautiful about serving something that sustains people, and it's art to me. There's something so beautiful about the aesthetics, and it was such it's a beautiful field, and I know it's hard work, and those are the things that I gained from that. And then I met Jess when I was in San Luis. I met her at a train stop, my partner, and that kind of set this whole other chain of events into motion. I quit my job. I moved with her to Ukiah, and then from there we both went to Chico to
Yeah.
attend Chico State. And even there, I was still a little bit unsure. I kept doing restaurant work, and I finished my degree, which was in English literature, because that's if there's one person that I look back on and I admired the most, it was my English teacher in high school.
Mm.
He gave me a lot of those things, and he was kind of my mentor for the time when I didn't have that mentor, that person. But still, around the end, and this is where I finally connect everything. It's when around the end of my high school career, it was probably like I guess it was like the last, not my high school, my college career, earning my degree. It was like the last year I started working with as a paraprofessional in schools, and I was in a Monsevier class, and I'd do sub jobs just all around Chico, and then I did respite work as well for a family in town. Um, they had like 4 or 5 kiddos in their house, and some were on the spectrum, some had Down syndrome, and it was just like this wide array, this beautiful array of kiddos that become like your family in respite work. And I said, like, I love both of these things, and I want to eventually do something in this field, and I don't know what it is, because I was like, I love in-home work, but I also love that school side where I'm with kiddos and I get to teach them things and work with them. And then we moved to Fort Bragg after I got my degree, and it just so happened that like I saw this and I didn't know this existed, and I started reading about it, and I was like, this is literally like the thing that like I want. This is it's like the answer, and that was like my purpose. And that's when I realized like the ABA is it's like it's everything that I could want in a job, working with kids in home settings, working on skills, helping families. It was like the everything job. And yeah, and I was so nervous when I talked to Sherry, or it was Linda. I talked to Linda
Yeah.
first, I
Yeah.
remember, for the interview, and I remember calling and thinking I wrote a very nice cover letter. I know that. But I was like, I know I'm not like, probably the most qualified for this job, but I was like, with all the experience I have and my ability to critically analyze, through my degree with English literature and my work ethic with working in restaurants all those years, it's like those two things put me in a really good position to do any job well and succeed in any area that I'm trying to work in. So yeah, and then it started from there, and then I met you guys, and it was kind of the same thing where you were telling me about your path through fine arts, and just
Yeah.
kind of you made your way, and it's just so interesting. The path presented itself before you, and you were willing to go on that path. And I was like me. It's beautiful. It's kind of crazy that life it gives you what you need. Maybe not always what you want, but it'll lead you in the right direction if you're listening, and you're patient, and
But
you're always ready.
do you see a string now that is tangible to you? Like, okay, I mean, you shared about being, in a service appreciation, being a server, whether it was, making food for people or whatnot,
Hmm.
but is it all add up? Like, kind of like, well, obviously this is what I'm kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of it's 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 interesting how it does. Um, yeah, and I would never have expected to find myself here. Um, but yeah, the string, those chains, it's kind of wild. And that's the thing. It's always unexpected. That's
Yeah.
that's one thing that I feel like life. Thinking back on the events, yeah, when I was 16 and everything that happened, it's like you know, even as a 16-year-old, you're so naive to so much, so much of the world. You might think you know a lot, but it's there's still so much, and it's hard to understand other people's decisions when you don't have that perspective. Um, and yeah, that's kind of for me where that started for me, building my own perspective and trying to figure out things. And um, yeah, how it all connects though, it's kind of interesting. And thinking about meeting Jess, it was the same thing. It was super
Mhm.
unexpected. I was just sitting there. I was in Martinez. I was waiting for the train, and she was just standing there waiting for the train. Immediately, I had been on that train stop so many times, like dozens and dozens of times on that same trip, and I wasn't expecting anything different to happen that time. And I just saw her, and it's wild. And that set off this whole other chain of events. And yeah, but it's like I said, I think life, like it's this balance between uh, being patient and understanding that things will come, but also knowing that you need to be ready and willing when those things do arrive, to adapt, to change, and to analyze your situation, and be willing to take risks. And yeah, and that's kind of how yeah, I think I ended up here, honestly. And an interesting chain, to say the very least. But yeah.
You shared, I don't know if the right word is like leap of faith or being
Hmm.
presented with a choice.
Yeah.
And, the idea of there's a fork, a split in the road,
Yeah.
and I can go here, maybe the familiar, or I can go here. What is it, do you think it is that helps nurture the decision making process at that point to go to the
Mm.
place for the road less traveled, if you will, maybe,
Hmm.
even if it's just your own roads? What is that? How do you, and I don't,
Mm.
well, if you're okay with this,
Yeah.
how do you, how does, how do you talk about that decision making process? Like, I'm going to go left as opposed to right today because something just hit that I didn't expect. And
Yeah.
how do you deal, what is that?
It's, to me, like the biggest thing is listening to your body. It's listening to your gut. It's listening to your instinct. And I think um, throughout life, I think it's always talking to you. There's always input from your gut. And I think a lot of the times we can choose to say, okay, let's let's do this thing, and let's try it out, and let's see what happens, if you want to listen to that. Because I think at the end of the day, your gut is right, even if it's not like the best decision, um, even if it's not like the thing that you want. It's always going to be like your gut, your body will tell you. And you got to know yourself to some degree, when you're making those types of decisions. But I think it's always easier to take that other road, the easy one. That's like to me, that's like you're kind of ignoring what you see with your eyes is not what you're necessarily feeling inside, and you're using, your perception rather than what you feel inside to guide you along those paths. And I mean, with your perception, yeah, you might look at that easier choice and that easier route and say or think that, yeah, that's the road I should be going down. But your body might be telling you something different. Your gut's going to be it's going to be fighting that, and it's going to say you should really try this other thing. And it's interesting because there is like some degree of like physiological response in a lot of these things, and that was, for me, that was the same thing. It was when I met Jess, it wasn't even like a question. Like, I felt this way that I knew I'd never felt, and I was like, I don't know if I'm going to feel this way ever again, and I'm gonna chase that. I'm gonna try and figure that out. And yeah, it was powerful enough to be, yeah, like I'm gonna quit my job. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna do all
Yeah.
this. But it is that thing where I feel like, man, you really have to be aware of what's going on inside you and not try. It's like being in the present, both mentally and physically, and not just mentally with what you see. You got to really pay attention to your body's reactions to things too,
I
which
think
isn't
that that's
always
it.
easy.
No, man, I think that's very hard. And I remember when I first went to college and
Hmm.
I had a decision to make. And honestly, to this day, I don't remember what the decision was. But it was one of those, kind of analogous splits in the road.
Yeah.
And I don't know how profound the events were or the reasoning behind, why I found myself at that crossroad. But what I do remember is contending with that physical mental space
Yeah.
and recognizing very interestingly that it set deep in my gut,
Hmm.
physically, emotionally, however you want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have a lot of experience per se of assessing what is that tool
Hmm.
that I can use to help me make decisions that are, for lack of, whatever, the weight of that decision is.
Yeah.
It was analogous to something. I chuckle a little bit, but still today I utilize it.
Hmm.
You're a little kid going into the store and you're like, should I steal that candy or should I not? Like, I really want it,
Yeah.
but I'm not supposed to. But that type of like deep gut, like,
Hmm.
deep down inside what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I applied that historically to, hey, should I just pack my bags and get my car and take a blind drive to southern United States and figure
Yeah.
out how to, live for a moment?
Yeah.
And it would always result in, an appropriate answer.
Hmm.
And equally to, hey, should I go and apply to this job?
Yeah.
Or should I, risk everything and try something new?
Yeah.
And what I am thankful of is that over time, and you alluded to this as well, is we can make decisions in life as long as we're not causing harm, right? And doing things deliberately
Hmm.
to, cause waves of adversity around us.
Yeah.
But you can to some degree also make these decisions, and it might not necessarily be about whether it was right or wrong,
Hmm.
because the outcome is something to gain. You could
Yeah.
be like, man, I didn't make the right decision, but yet if we stop for a second, what did you just gain from putting yourself there,
Yeah.
going down that new path or whatnot? You leave with, I just put something new in my tool belt that's going to help me navigate that next unpredicted turn in life, if you will.
Yeah.
And that I find is, there's no downsides anymore. As
Hmm.
long as we're not causing harm to ourselves and others, it's perpetual growth. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily right or wrong.
Hmm.
And that's mind blowing to me, that then you can stop and take a look back at where you came. And it, in a weird way, it makes sense through that kind of, chaotic journey, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, you know, in those regards, it's like it's always been, um, you know, everyone is so concerned usually with getting to the top of the mountain that they don't enjoy the walk up, right, or the hike up. And I feel like that's been, you know, that's where, and that's what I guess, you know, getting back to what you're saying, that's exactly those journeys that you take, and whether, yeah, it's right or wrong is it's irrelevant, you know. It's regardless, you're going on these journeys and you gain something as a human, and sometimes, you know, it's like the path, it's just not, it's not clear for everyone. And I think a lot
Yeah.
of people, you know, they might find some fear and intimidation. I know I did, you
Mhm.
know, because you just, because you are taking kind of like a leap of faith. You're blindly going somewhere, with that desire to learn more about yourself and, yeah, add things to your tool belt. But whether it's right or wrong, it gets you there.
It
uh,
does.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
From, sitting with Linda, chit chatting about the job and sending in, your killer cover letter, hanging out with, me and Sherry,
Hmm.
getting into the work and starting to do it with what you were bringing to the table from all your experiences. What was that like for you, getting into a home, digging into applied behavior analysis?
Yeah, it was, because, you know, you start ABA, and it's like this whole new, well, yeah, it's like if if you never known anything before about ABA, and you're learning about it for the first time, it's a whole new field. It's a whole new science. And when I started learning about it, I was just, I was I was instantly fascinated, not only by, yeah, helping kids, but also thinking about my own actions and behaviors, and, you know, trying to not self-analyze too much. But that's what I do. And I applied all those things to my own life, you know, rather quickly, and, you know, assess situations. But you know, taking what I knew and going into ABA, I think the hardest thing was when I got into sessions was, it was always for me, it was data. I was already obsessed with the data aspect because it was the physical representation of my work that I did inside the home. So, and like I said, I have a really strong work ethic. I want to do the best job that I can. I always leave it on the table. But yeah, it's just using those principles of critical analyzation. How can I get the job done right in the most efficient way? Those were all, to me, the most important things when I started the job. But I think that all those different tools that I learned from either working in the kitchen and having to interact with the team and communicate effectively at a rapid pace for 7 8 hours straight. um, I think that it's like you kind of focus in all that stress that I would get from the kitchens. It was always a very stressful job. And I got to the home, and it's like this different kind of stress where you're you're relying upon yourself, but you also have to, you know, kind of perform to a certain degree for the team, for the supervisor. And I think I always put so much pressure on myself as a perfectionist. I'm like, I got to do what I can. But it took some time to get into that business side and, ABA of like, of what the job actually is and what it entails, and like my expectations for myself and my supervisor's expectations, and trying to not only meet but exceed those. That um, Yeah, it was. I eventually toned it down a little bit and gave myself some slack,
You
because it's
come
like, you know.
across, um, being an individual who's pretty motivated about self-reflection,
Hmm.
and I've often found that to be a pretty positive trait, where someone can kind of, for lack of better words, separate from themselves and assess themselves, to determine well, kind of like that gut check we were talking about a long time ago.
Yeah.
How do I have to kind of approach this situation? I've got a couple choices here, and you know, what's the most appropriate thing to do to perpetuate continuity, as well as nurturing this relationship that you're building, nurturing, whatever you want to call it, with
Hmm.
families too.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't, and I'm sure like you, I don't take this job lightly. It's a massive, uh, we put ourselves in a, I don't even know what the right word is, but when you tell someone I'm here, and that potentially that family is in maybe some type of, nerved state because they just
Hmm.
received a diagnosis, or they are, maybe everything's good, but they've got goals and dreams for the future, and those are all
Yeah.
got question marks. And here comes, one of us, and
Yeah.
we're here to help.
Hmm.
Whoa, wait a second. Having the capacity to just say that
Hmm.
can't be taken lightly. How do
Yeah.
you kind of contend with, that's a lot of that's a lot of responsibility, and a lot of, it's human to human, almost contract, if you will. We can cause
Hmm.
harm easily by
Yeah.
not showing up, like you said, separating from our responsibilities, or not engaging in the day with, great clarity, intensity, and care. How do
Hmm.
you deal with that?
Hmm. That's tough because I'm thinking now, currently what I'm, this position, it still takes, it's like a whole new set of different responsibilities, but
And what's your current position, John, just for the viewers now?
it's the assistant program supervisor, or a
Okay.
assistant program supervisor. I'll be
Yep.
done with my degree in December.
Okay.
So wheeling and dealing here,
So
almost there.
awesome. I
Yeah,
can't wait to talk about that too.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think dealing with those responsibilities, it's really tough. Like and I think that I also think that for me, I'm overly analytic with most of what I do, and so it's like it's definitely a double-edged sword, because I think sometimes it might cloud my judgment, and kind of just delay something that should be done in a little bit more of a timely fashion. But um, I think a lot of people might not recognize the weight of their responsibility, or maybe they don't feel it as much, which is okay. And I guess it's not necessarily even a weight. Like, I think to me, it's a privilege that we get to go in and have that responsibility, right? And it's kind of this thing where we get to go and we get to help children grow. We help families grow, succeed, and
Yeah, man.
change, which is like there's a handful of things that you get to do that in. I mean, there's school, maybe some other programs like Big Brother, Big Sister, but man, you're in there, like, and your responsibility is it's immense. Like, you do so many things for a kiddo that you might. I guess that's where it is. I'm very cognizant of all those different hats and responsibilities when I was an RBT. So, and that's why I felt that weight. But I think a lot of RBTs might not like get that full grasp of everything that they're doing because they're just doing it and that's what they do. But you're as an RBT, you're doing so much for a family, and you're providing so many more services than just an RBT, and it's such a beautiful thing. But yeah, it can be hard to contend with a lot of those responsibilities. But that, I guess, also real quick, the support structure has been so important with families, supervisors, leads. That's the one area where I feel like you find some respite and you find a
Mm.
little bit of peace at your job, because there's a lot of positive reinforcement from your supervisors, You eventually do get to see the data. You eventually do get to see the change, but that it's all those immediate consequences, like especially if you've had a bad day, um, that they're helping you through it, and everyone's kind of helping you along. We're all on the boat. We're all on the ship. We all want the same thing, and that's also beautiful. Everyone wants the same thing. So I think that that kind of alleviates some of that weight.
Well, that's a stimulus for me to want to jump on the AI conversation, but I'll hold up for a second here.
Yeah.
Uh, so, John, you are involved in school. So
Hmm.
you took the jump and you decided to go get your master's in working on preparing to sit in the future for your BCBA. You want to talk a little bit about what that's like, the kind of that shift of maybe just fundamentally, like I know when I went through it, that's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah. Um, that the initial jump from just being RBT as my job full time to RBT full time with school um, wasn't too bad. That was very manageable for me. Um, and I attribute that mostly, yeah, to the support team, and then also to the fact that by the time I started, it was last May. By the time I started, I had already been with AI for, um, I guess that would have been five. I've been like 8 or 9 months. So I felt confident enough in my skill as an RBT that my job was like something that I do, but I didn't have those same anxieties and those weights that I felt at first, because I knew how to do it, to the best of my ability, and work with myself and with the kiddos. But when I started the program supervisor, that was like this. It was a whirlwind of holy crud. Um, what the heck's going on here? And it's no one's fault. It is
Mhm.
just what happens when you enter a new thing, a new
Sure.
field, and because it's like a whole new, it's not anything like being an RBT in regards to the practical application of what we're doing. So yeah, it was a very steep learning curve, but I wanted to do it because when I started as an RBT, I was like, okay. I talked to Linda too, and she was like, you can do an RBT, you can eventually be a lead RBT, then maybe be a BCABA or a BCBA, and it starts here and here at this salary, and everything sounded so great. And then I just assumed, after working in all these other places, okay, like I'm gonna have to be here for a certain number of years before I can start that trip. And I met with Andrea in February of, I think that was was that last year? Yeah, that was last year. I met with her in February. And I talked to her, and she was like, oh, you can start it whenever. And I like the same day, I just went straight to the computer. I looked up programs. I found Arizona State
Yeah.
online. It was affordable. And I hopped right on that bandwagon. I started making
Wow.
phone calls,
Yeah.
and I got my resume or my recommendation letters. And yeah, it was so rapid fire, because I learned, you know, something else that I learned from the cooking jobs is that you're not gonna go anywhere there, like in a restaurant. Like you're kind of stuck unless you have school experience, like culinary experience at some school, or someone. Other than that, you're kind of just a cook, and that's where you're going to be stuck. So I was like, upward movement, when Linda said that I could do that, and then Andrew said you can do that like whenever. I was like, all right, we're moving up as fast as we can. Let's hop on that train. I'm ready for the ride. And yeah, and it's been intense this year. It's been getting more intense, partly because of, you know it's hitting this point that I'm almost done, and I'm definitely getting that last 10% weakness, which
Yeah.
is like where most people want to say,
Yep.
okay, I'm done with things.
Yep.
And it's hard. It's hard. And the job's like a lot of things you got to do on a daily basis. But Yeah, I have no regrets doing the program. The program and the master's classes, at least through ASU, have been accessible. I've only had one or two that have required like more than 10 to 15 hours a
Mhm.
week. That was one of my last ones where I was just like, it was constantly reading research articles, which I love. I was like,
Sure.
that was my thing. But man, it can be exhausting. And that's why I'm taking a break in early August
Yeah.
to give my mind a well needed rest before I lose it
Good
because
for
I
you.
am ready for it. Yeah.
For you. What does it take to be, and this isn't a hierarchy question,
Hmm.
what does it take to be a good leader? Because I do believe every one of us, regardless of a position, need to engage in this question. But what
Yeah.
does it take to be a good leader?
I think if I could, if I could really, um, if I could condense it, because I think that there, you could probably write a list of things, but I do think there are a few key items that are more important, or at least on that list, you know, of things like that I put at the top. It would definitely be the idea that if one of us doesn't succeed, then none of us succeed. For me, that's like one of the biggest things, especially with the RBTs. Um, and me as an RBT, it's like when if I have an RBT that's struggling, I take it so personally. I like for me, I'm like I want to do what I can to improve skills, to improve whatever they need. I want to assist them however I can. Um, it's really that, to me, that's like the concept of what great leadership really entails. It's knowing that we're a unit, and it's not about me. It's not about what I do, because I know that I don't do the hard work. I do the desk stuff. I know the RBTs. After being an RBT, I know that they're the ones in the house. They're doing the hard stuff. But I think, yeah, for me the most important thing is it's always going to be too that, yeah, we're a cohesive unit. We're a well-oiled machine. And if one, you know, cog in the wheel is not working, or one gear is malfunctioning, then none of us are gonna reach that true potential that we're looking for. And I think that that's not only for everyone as a unit, but for that RBT that's struggling, to help them reach their personal goals and reach what they want to reach and achieve that personal satisfaction and that personal level of success that, like, that I hold a lot higher than anything else. Like when we were measuring success, it's never about, it's never about money. Money is a wonderful byproduct, of having, you know, spent the time and investment in your future with school and things. And that's kind of what happens. You invest, and then that's what you get your return as. You get a better job that pays you more. But it's personal success is, it shouldn't, it's not measured, to me at least, in um, monetary gains. It's all about like how you feel you're doing at your own job, how others like want to help you, and if you do need help, how can we help you get to that point where you feel like, I guess, yeah, it's like, how can we get you to that point where you feel like I did, where I felt like this job was, even on those hard days, I was resilient, and I still did the best job that I could no matter what, and I was professional. And like, how, what do we need to do to get you there, so we can all be there together, and we can all be on that same level of, you know, personal success and personal growth. And then where do we get to go from there at that point, you know? Um, to me, that I would say that's like the biggest thing about being a leader, like, because that takes a lot of patience, takes a lot of observation, communication. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on with that, but I think that's like that's the most important thing to
And where's ego inside of all this one?
me.
How you like that question?
Yeah. Ego. Okay, I would say ego is you're cognizant that you're still a part of that machine. Your
Yep.
function is still necessary, but it's also just as necessary for everyone else's part too. And we're no, one gear or one cog or one piece, it's not better than the other. That's the hard part. And I think, yeah, it's that's something, another gut check here. You got to really know yourself and think to yourself, like, what is my role? What is my position? What is my importance in this program, in this intervention in the company? And yeah, and it's to help others succeed. I feel like that's your biggest job as a leader, as a program supervisor. Like you're in charge of, you know, RBTs, a bunch of RBTs, kids programs, intervention programs, and that's got to be your focus. Like, how do we get everyone where they want to be, not where we want them, but where they want to be.
When you
Right.
kind of step back, and I mean, you're fortunate, fortunate to have experienced a variety of life, through the paths that you've, gone through. And like I said in the beginning, I'm all in on AAI,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, and I I've had to contend with trying to understand why AAI establishes certain value systems and why AI did from the get-go. And I can't, obviously I came to the table with something, so it's very
Mm-hmm.
personal too, you know.
Yeah.
In a lot of the decisions, from day one, I talk about a door has been open and we're going to approach things a certain way, but it's a journey where it's going to take,
Mm-hmm.
we got to get there. It's this collective force to get there. And the further we move down this path, the more and more, one day we'll be on top of that mountain all together, looking around being like, look what we've done
Mm-hmm.
together,
Yeah.
and that is, I don't know if I can't fully even comprehend a word that can hit as deep as just being able to know that that's a motivation.
So I
You
think
know,
that what we're trying to do and what we're making progress towards is much more important. It's much more um, it's much more beneficial to the individual. Because I think that people feel like a lot of the times, at least for me, and I'll speak for myself, a job's a job, and that can still be an ABA, and a lot of people might feel that way, where a job is a job.
mhm.
And I do think AI takes good steps to ensuring that it isn't just a job. Like we try to do as much as we can for the employees, and it's not it isn't just a place to work and earn a paycheck. You feel good about your work, and you're, I guess, recognized. And that's really what it is, because the hierarchy doesn't usually recognize people. Like you're either this or this. um, and you work and you do your job and you go home. But I feel like it's so beneficial seeing the way people interact with each other at AI, and all the positive reinforcement and words of encouragement, and everyone, it feels like everyone's trying to help each other, you know and that's what I love. I think that's like, yeah, it's like a normal job. But I think that idea it's not that. It's like it's cutthroat. Like you want to be better than everyone. You want to just, because that's like the environment they've set up. that's
Of
how
course,
that's
yeah,
how the
it's the
structure
system.
works.
Yeah,
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 exactly.
of
And
course.
I don't think it's like that, at AI at all, to be
I,
honest.
I'm and I appreciate that, and John, I I keep reiterating, and I don't think it's possible to necessarily con, no disrespect to you, but to
Mhm.
fully confirm that your words aren't being influenced by the fact that we're kind of sitting here and I am who I am or whatever. I don't want to be
Yeah,
naive, but
yeah.
I trust you, right? And I appreciate
Hmm.
your feedback, and I look for objective critique completely. Those things that we talk about all the time, one of the fears that I have is that there can be cliche statements. It's easy to say these things. You know, it's easy to boast, but to act those things and to do those things is that very, I mean, it's hard work. It really is, because it forces us to every day do those things that you were talking about when you first started out going into the home. Where am I at in this situation? Where do I, want to go? And then it grows
Yeah.
into a collective force. And I appreciate it a lot too, that you use the we term a lot.
Yeah.
We are trying to, and I don't take that lightly, because we are saturated and almost encouraged by our social structures to have that kind of selfish approach. I am going to be this succeed. I am going to succeed. Now, granted, I encourage everyone, and I send it out all the time. Stop, look in the mirror. You pat yourself on the back.
Yeah.
You did it. There's that old adage, and I say it over and over again, especially inside of education or this work. It's not about me. That's mind boggling. I don't understand that. Yeah, it is. And also something else of a group of us are trying to do something too. And it may not be for everybody. And I get that. But we are trying to do something. And I wish there was a button I could press that, like, just put that gut feeling we were talking about, should I steal the candy or not, in everyone's stomach. Like, I really mean it. We are trying hard to do it right. And it's a much more, it is a journey. It is just going to be a journey, because it seems to be a much more meaningful, sustainable, and it's a harder path. But man, the reward is incredible. So last question for you?
Yes, sir. Let's go.
What would you tell to either a prospective BCBA or prospective RBT that was curious about applying to work here? What would you tell them to be thinking about? I will tell you, John, that these videos, my friend, are watched. We know that from our interviews. People look at these as verification of who we are as a group of people. So what would you want to tell someone who's interested in either starting career or coming from somewhere else?
I would say the first thing would be maybe get ready for like a little bit of a perspective change. And I don't know, maybe, I don't know if culture shock's the right word, but it's interesting thing about culture shock and work environment, because I think, like, when I got here, like the way I communicated with people, especially online and in person, it just wasn't as personable, and like I don't know, it's just wasn't as easy to connect to people. And now I feel like starting to work here, it's become this thing where the way that I do communicate is much more like, I'm more focused on the other person, I guess, than myself. And that's really what the big picture is, isn't it? It's like, if you come here, like, get ready to be part of a team, get ready to be a collective unit, get ready to add input, get ready to feel valued as a member of the team, get ready to do some hard work, and get ready to have a lot of fun.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What a great opportunity this was, man. I hope you enjoyed it half as much as I have, man. This has been seriously a lot of fun, very, mentally stimulating, the whole gamut, man. What a great way to spend probably a couple hours of my day.
Awesome.
That's it, man. John, I appreciate you
Yeah.
deeply. I know that you've got so many people around you that behind your back and right in front of your face celebrate you. You keep up the good work, man. It is really a great privilege to be able to observe and your journey here over the past couple of years. And yeah, thank you so much for the calm that you bring, the compassion, the professionalism, and the input, and the wide open ears, man. It's incredible. Thank you kindly, my friend. I wish you. I hope the rest of your day is great.
From me. Thank you so much,
Yeah,
Brian.
man.
I such a pleasure. Like I feel like we're sitting back at TNT, having our
That's right.
burritos, having a
That's
beer,
right.
enjoying ourselves. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
been so nice. I appreciate it.
I'll be
Caught up
getting
a
on
little
that
bit.
airplane hopefully in the near future, and I'll be coming to visit everyone for
awesome.
sure. So, high five to you. Never had the full privilege. You got a bit and pieces of saying hi to the fan behind the closed door there, but I wish you all very, very well, and think fondly of you all. So you take care, my friend, and we'll catch up.
Yeah, we will catch up soon, Brian. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you. Enjoy.
Yeah. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.